What's up, guys? It's been a while since I've put out a new video for you guys, and I do have a video planned to come out sometime early next month, so look forward to that when that comes out. In the meantime, I figured I might as well talk a little bit about a new movie I just saw recently, probably the first movie I saw of 2023 that's new, and that being Shazam 2, Fury of the Gods. Now, I just wanted to start out this review by saying that I absolutely love the first Shazam. It's no secret I'm a huge DC fan, and the first Shazam is not only a really great movie, but I think one of the first newer DC movies that really gave this franchise a boost it really needed. In a sea of films with varying levels of quality, Shazam was fortunately a film that gave more DC fans like me a lot of hope. Upon further reflection, I think DC has made some better films since then, but as far as a fun-filled superhero movie goes, Shazam still meets all of those expectations with the right amount of humor, heart, and character. With a sequel coming out so soon, I definitely had some interest in it, but I'll admit it wasn't a movie I was super excited for. Most of the trailers were just fine and didn't really impress too much. But I was still giving out hope because this still had the same team of the first movie with a few new additions. The main one that's still intact leading this is David F. Sandberg, who I just wanted to point out is a really talented dude, and from what I've seen in interviews, a really genuine guy too. I'm glad someone with such a big online presence is getting to make some very likable movies. And in the case of Shazam 2, I still thought it was a pretty fun time. To get it right out of the way, I don't think the sequel is nearly as good as the first movie for a couple of reasons. However, despite being a downgrade, it still has a lot of what made the first movie so likable. The story focuses on Billy Batson and his new family trying to get accustomed to their new superhero status. Things get a little haywire when a new threat comes in the form of two Greek gods coming to Earth, hell-bent on destroying humanity, and thus it's up to Billy and his team to stop them as Shazam. As far as strengths go with this movie, much like the first, this still has a very likable cast of characters, starting with Shazam, played by Zachary Levi and Astor Angel respectively. Both actors do a fairly good job embracing the more light-hearted tone with a lot of great back and forth between the other cast members, though one downside with Levi's and Angel's performance is that there's a bit too much of a contrast to how these characters act, as Billy is about to turn 18, and Angel plays it a lot more dramatically at points, where Levi is more of a goofball and acts more like he's still a kid. It almost feels like Levi is playing a younger character than he actually is, so it's a little distracting to see an 18-year-old act more mature when the adult version of that same 18-year-old is acting more like a child than his actual kid self. Even despite that, the actors still do a good job, and that's mostly thanks to how much chemistry they have with the other actors in the film. The rest of the cast is pretty great in this, with the kids being a lot of fun. And we also get to see a lot more screen time while these characters are playing their older selves. And each actor does a good job still maintaining that childlike innocence while playing a superhero. Megan Good in particular being a very charming highlight. You get more moments with them that are fun, and even some decent character moments from a story perspective with how the film doesn't try to distract too much away from them. Hell, you even get to see a bigger role with Dimanche Hanzu's character, who is great, and there's even a weird yet funny image involving his character and another DC hero, which I won't spoil, but it was very surreal to see in a funny way. Another aspect that makes this movie fun like the first movie is its tone, as it's very lighthearted, but knows how to balance its tone very well between the more dramatic and comedic moments. There was never really a moment where it felt too out of place, like a joke comes at an inappropriate time, or just so self-serious that it becomes more ridiculous. It's fairly consistent on making a tone that feels authentic to the story, and it helps that it has a fairly decent pace. Doesn't overstay its welcome, and they do a lot of creative action sequences and set pieces that do make the film quite enjoyable to watch. David F. Sandberg did a great job giving this film a bit of an edge with more violent and brutal moments, while also giving the film some heart with characters that I do ultimately care about here. Though if I have to give to more negatives on the film, really Shazam's 2 biggest issue I feel is that while all done well, there's nothing in this film that was that new. It is still very much a by-the-numbers superhero movies with a lot of the tropes you expect. You kind of see where the plot is going, a pair of villains that are serviceable but are mostly just seen as a threat, and it ends with a lot of big CGI spectacle. Nothing inherently wrong with that as long as it's done well, but I do feel like the first film was a bit more refreshing. It was smaller scale, it wasn't overtly self-aware to the point of annoyance, and it was just a nice superhero movie that did a decent job focusing on characters. This sequel definitely tries to be a bigger, grander sequel, and because of that, it doesn't quite have the heart the first movie had. Though even despite the fact there is a lot of CGI battles and standard villains here, they at least did more with them in this movie. There's a lot more creativity to the kind of creatures they fight, including one dealing with a strange yet kind of funny product placement, admittedly. Plus, Lucy Liu and Helen Mirren are decent in their roles and at least give these characters a good dynamic as far as villains go. It isn't as excessive with its CGI overkill and managed to still look pretty good from an effects perspective. But it also doesn't overshadow the story and characters either, as while excessive at points, it doesn't feel as mindless as something like Black Adam. Basically what I'm trying to say is this movie is significantly better than Black Adam. It does still have more character and even some decent drama here in comparison to that film, though nothing on par with the stuff featured in the first film. There's nothing that feels as well done dramatically in this sequel compared to some of the stuff dealing with Billy's mom in the first movie. Even despite that, I don't think this film is completely devoid of heart due to the strengths that the first film had that are still intact in this sequel. So overall, I felt Shazam 2: Fury of the Gods was a really fun time. Even despite being a downgrade from the first film, it still has a decent amount of charm and charisma the first had to offer. If it wasn't for maybe an oversaturation of superhero movies between Marvel and DC, I can see this standing out a little bit stronger as a film. Though for what it is, I do think it manages to succeed in delivering a film that's an entertaining ride the whole way through. As far as DC films go, this isn't quite their strongest, but certainly not one of their worst. It still feels like it has a voice in the mix of being a fun summer blockbuster, thanks to David F. Sandberg. It's a superhero movie that isn't too new, but if you're into these kind of movies, I recommend checking this one out, especially for DC fans who are interested in seeing what this new reinvention of the DC cinematic universe will end up being like. So take that for what it's worth. And just in case if you just so happen to be watching this, David F. Sandberg, since I know you have a lot more of an online presence compared to the average movie director, I seriously hope you get even more work later on. Whether it be Shazam 3 or some other project, I'm glad to see someone who has a lot of creative talent like yourself going from YouTube to film in such a big way. I hope for more directors who get as lucky as you in the future. And also, one last thing, since you mentioned this after I asked you about this on Twitter, please direct an animated movie, Sandberg. That end credits of the first Shazam is seriously one of the best end credits they've ever done. Seeing this and hearing you being so passionate about animation in other interviews in the past makes me hope you consider that opportunity more so. So yeah, love your work, man. I'm gonna give Shazam 2: Fury of the Gods a 7 out of 10. So that was my thoughts on Shazam 2. What did you guys think about it if you happen to see it already? Feel free to let me know in the comments below. Hit that red subscribe button on the bottom, and I'll see you guys again in the near future. Later. When I'm lying in my I don't wanna go. Nothing in the suits turning right.